All right, strap yourselves in, folks, because this deep dive, oh boy, this one's going straight to the loony bin. Arkham Asylum, to be exact.
That's one way to put it.
We're diving deep into Joker. Folie, Deux.
A musical sequel? Can you believe that?
Oh, believe me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, Joker back in 2019, that movie really got under our skin.
It did. Big time.
Box office smash, awards buzz, but it also sparked some serious conversations about mental health, about how we treat each other, about society even.
Heavy stuff. And now we're getting a musical.
A full-blown singing and dancing musical, Joaquin Phoenix belting it out, Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, and not just like a cameo, she's a main player.
You gotta admire the audacity, at least. I mean, going from dark and gritty to dot jazz hands, that's a swing for the fences.
Do you think director Todd Phillips is maybe, I don't know, messing with us a little?
Maybe, but you know, Phillips, he's always been one to keep us guessing. From The Hangover to Joker, he likes to play with expectations, subvert them even.
So what's he trying to subvert with this one? The entire musical genre. Our sanity.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but the critics, they haven't exactly been kind, terrible, forgettable. Some even think he's intentionally tanking the film to avoid, the whole political firestorm the first one caused.
Right. Can't talk about Joker without someone bringing up politics.
That's a touchy subject, no doubt.
But we're not here to dissect political agendas, are we? We're here to understand why this movie exists. What's Phillips trying to say with a musical about two of those infamous villains in comic book history?
See, and that's the question, isn't it? Is he just going for shock value, or is there something deeper going on? And to get at that, we have to remember what made the first Joker so captivating. It wasn't just a comic book movie.
Oh, definitely not. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You couldn't look away.
Exactly. It was a psychological thriller, a character study, really, that just happened to feature this iconic villain. And what made it so powerful was how it explored Arthur Fleck's descent into madness.
And how that descent reflected the cracks in society itself. Gotham was practically a character in that film.
100%. And Folie, Deux, which, by the way, literally means a madness shared by two, well, it takes that concept of mirroring and kind of like flips it inward. We're not just in Gotham anymore. We're inside Arthur's head.
And Lady Gaga, or should I say Lee Quinzel, she's our guide through this twisted mindscape.
Right. The film picks up with Arthur. He's been declared competent to stand trial for,
For basically turning Gotham into his own personal circus act.
Right. So we find him in Arkham Asylum, and that's where he meets Lee, a psychiatrist who, let's just say, she's a little too fascinated by her patient.
And that fascination, that's where the music comes in, right?
Exactly. This isn't your typical musical with big dance numbers and show-stopping solos. Think of it more like their inner thoughts, their emotions, they just erupt into song. The more intense things get, the more they sing.
And not in like a polished Broadway kind of way.
Yeah.
The source material actually described it as more karaoke night than anything else, which, I mean, when you think about it, is kind of brilliant.
It's definitely a choice. And it tells us a lot about how Phillips is approaching these characters. Arthur and Lee, they're not polished performers. They're two deeply troubled individuals. And their singing, it reflects that. It's raw. It's vulnerable.
Almost painful to listen to at times. You're not supposed to walk out humming these tunes. It's more about making you feel what they're feeling.
Exactly. And that's where casting someone like Lady Gaga is so perfect. She's this incredible vocalist, right? But here, her performance is very restrained, almost amateurish at times.
Which kind of plays into one of the big criticisms of the film, doesn't it? That it's, well, how do I put this? Boring. Like, not enough happens.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if you're going in expecting, like, Joker on steroids with tons of action and mayhem, you're going to be disappointed.
So it's not a typical comic book movie, then?
Not even close. This one's all about what's going on inside, the psychology of these characters, the way their delusions start to, like, bleed into each other.
So less about plot, more about atmosphere. Headspace.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Phillips took all those classic musical elements, the songs, the dances, and he turned them inward. They become expressions of Arthur and Lee's mental states. It's actually pretty fascinating when you think about it.
Okay, so speaking of the music, we got to talk about Hildur Guðnadóttir. She's back to score this film after winning an Oscar for the first one. And this time, she's not just creating a soundscape, she's writing these, like, twisted show tunes.
And you know what? This is where even the film's biggest critics had to give it up. Regardless of what people thought about the story, the acting, whatever, the soundtrack was almost universally praised.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the music.
It's good stuff. Gudadotir, she's got this way of blending these really beautiful melancholic melodies with these like unsettling, distorted instrumentals. It creates this constant tension, this feeling of unease that just sucks you in.
It's like a carnival in your nightmares.
Uh-huh.
And there are even some, like, unexpected covers in there, right? Like actual pop songs.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And this is where things get really interesting, especially if you're a music nerd like me. So they use these classic songs, but there's this like undeniable Nick Cave influence running through the whole thing.
Nick Cave, the murder ballads guy.
Exactly. He even ended up covering a few of the tracks himself after he saw the film.
Oh, no way. Seriously. No, that's dedication. But, okay, I gotta ask, how does Nick Cave fit into all of this?
Well, think about Cave's music for a second. It's dark, right? Brooding, full of these characters who are like living on the edge, struggling with obsession, with faith, with all these big, messy emotions.
Okay, yeah. Starting to see the connection here.
It's subtle, but it's brilliant. Phillips is drawing these parallels between artists like Cave and, well, Arthur Fleck. Both of them, they tap into this darkness, this rawness that both repels and fascinates us.
So are you saying that we're all just a little obsessed with the darkness? That we secretly kind of root for the Joker, even though we know we shouldn't?
Maybe. It's definitely something to think about, right?
Okay, so we've talked about Arthur, we've talked about the music, but we can't forget about the other half of Folie, Deux, Harley Quinn. And not just any Harley Quinn. We're talking Lady Gaga here.
Yeah, iconic casting for sure. Although there has been some debate about whether the character is, fully fleshed out.
Like, is she given enough to do? Enough depth?
Kind of. See, this is where that whole folie à deux thing, the shared delusion, gets really interesting. We first meet Lee. She's a psychiatrist at Arkham, seemingly much more put together than Arthur, right? But there's this, undeniable pull she feels towards him, towards his chaos.
So she's drawn to the darkness, too. But is it genuine? Like, does she really care about Arthur? Or is she manipulating him, using him to explore her own, I don't know, inner Harley Quinn?
Right. And the film, it never really gives us a straight answer. It's left deliberately ambiguous, which honestly I think is what makes it so effective.
So we're left wondering, just like with Arthur, how much of what we see is real and how much is just a product of their shared madness.
Exactly. And this is where I think it connects back to us, the audience, because we're drawn to the Joker, to Harley Quinn, to their chaos, just like Lee is. But why? What does that say about us?
Are we all just a little bit in love with the idea of burning it all down?
Maybe. Or maybe we just like a good show. Either way, it's a question worth asking ourselves.
So we've called this film a gamble. We've called it an experiment. But I guess for you listening, it comes down to one question. Is it any good?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And honestly, there's no easy answer. Like, if you're looking for a fun night out at the movies, something straightforward, this ain't it.
Definitely not a typical comic book movie.
Not even close. But if you're up for something different, something that really gets under your skin, well then Joker, Folie à Deux might just be a wild ride.
It's definitely a film that stays with you. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it.
And that's what good art does, right? Makes you think, makes you feel. And this film, it does both. In spades.
One thing I keep coming back to is this idea that maybe, just maybe, Folie à Deux is a film that needs time. Time to breathe, time to find its audience.
Ooh, I like that, like a fine wine. It has to age before you can truly appreciate it.
Exactly. And honestly, there's something kind of exciting about that, isn't there? The idea that this film might be rediscovered years from now, reevaluated even.
There's a quote from an Italian film critic that I read. He called it a cult classic in the making. Said it reminded him of those early David Lynch films.
Oh, wow. That's high praise. And, I can totally see that. It's got that same kind of dreamlike, surreal quality to it. You're never quite sure what's real and what's not, just like inside Arthur's head.
And isn't that the point? Phillips isn't giving us easy answers here. He's forcing us to confront the darkness, the ambiguity in these characters, and maybe even in ourselves.
Well, on that note, I think we've done our due diligence, folks. We've taken a deep dive into the wild, weird, and wonderful world of Joker. Folie à Deux. Whether you loved it, hated it, or are still scratching your head trying to figure it out, one thing's for sure. This is a film that's going to stick with us for a long time.
Absolutely. It's a conversation starter, that's for sure. And I have a feeling we'll be talking about this one for years to come.
And who knows? Maybe in a few years, we'll revisit this deep dive and see how our perspectives have changed.
Now, that's an episode I would tune in for.
Until next time, folks, keep it real. Or should I say, keep it theatrical.